Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me again. Another podcast, part two. There's been quite a number of developments on assisted dying since I last did this. So, again, rather than put it all in a lengthy Facebook post, I thought I'd put it on a little podcast. And then, if you are interested enough to want to listen to my ramblings, you can listen to it at your leisure. It's really an update, but it's more than that. I wanted to start off by saying thank you. Thank you to so many of you have got behind me on this. I'm quite touched by the number of people that responded to my request to get in touch with your MPs and to make your voice heard. An astonishing number of you have done that. I thought maybe if I could reach a dozen or so people, I'd be doing well. It's been fabulous. And I know you all lead busy lives like we all do. And the fact that so many of you have taken the time, made the time to do that is great. And I've even had a lot of feedback from the early responder MPs. Their messages have been passed back to me by some of you, which is even better, to actually understand the landscape a bit and see which MPs are in favour and which are not. It's valuable stuff. And if you have sent off to your MP and you're waiting for a response, do please pass it back to me. It is really valuable. So thank you very much. Can't thank you enough. Also, something that I thought I'd add, nobody has said to me, Warwick, we don't support you in this. But it occurs to me that there may be those amongst my friends who are actually not in favour of assisted dying. And I just wanted to say that as far as I am concerned, that's okay. That's okay. I'm not going to think the worse of anyone if their views don't happen to align with mine. That would be absurd. So if it just happens to be that your point of view is different from mine, then please don't think that that's ever going to be an issue, because it certainly isn't. It's been a busy week. Today I've been over to BBC Radio Shropshire again and done another interview. It's a live radio interview. I hate live interviews. I get very nervous and I'm not comfortable doing it. I think I got my message across, but I think I came across as being a little bit anxious. But I don't suppose that matters. It's not about me. It's about the message. So hopefully I got my message across. I do hope so anyway. So that's what I've been up to today. What I wanted to say, and I'm going to keep this a lot shorter than the first podcast, but what I wanted to say today was I wanted to talk about people that have objections that are against assisted dying, but that don't come up with good reasons as to why. Now, when these people are of high profile and they carry some weight in society, I think that that's a bit irresponsible to state a point of view when your facts are not straight. Because of course, if you're in a position of influence, you're going to influence other people. So there's been a few instances of late. Lord Singh has spoken out, and he's spoken about the selfishness of society on the assisted dying debate, and that made me a little bit annoyed to hear that. I think that that when my wife Anne asked to be put out of her pain and misery, the fact that we couldn't and wouldn't do anything about it, and we had to let her suffer until the bitter end, and it was bitter, I think that was a selfish act. And it's that we're trying to prevent people having to go through. So I don't buy the selfishness of society. I think that handing control back to people over their own exit, over their own destiny, is empowering people. I don't think it's suppressing them or subverting them in any way at all. So that was one thing. Now, this next thing is a bit contentious because there's been a couple of outspoken, high-profile members of the church have issued statements. And I'm not anti-church. I have Christian views. I may not be a church goer, but I'm certainly not anti-church. But I'm very annoyed at there's two things in particular. I'm looking here at a statement from the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's come out against assisted dying. And bearing in mind that if you work for the church, then if you are in favour of assisted dying, you've got to come out in opposition to the boss. However, Archbishop of Canterbury has said, and I quote, "Dying in pain is not inevitable. Good palliative care can provide us with the dignity and passion we're all searching for as we reach the end of our lives." Well, that reads very well, but sadly it's wrong. The reason I'm doing this is because I witnessed at first hand how palliative care failed to help my wife Anne, who had an appalling death, as you know. Dying in pain is not inevitable. Well, I'm afraid that for some, those for whom palliative care cannot help, dying in pain is fairly inevitable unless they take matters into their own hands. And I'd like to give you an example of this, just to show you how wrong I believe the Archbishop of Canterbury actually was. So when I last went to Westminster, we did a photo shoot in Parliament Square, and I found myself standing next to a girl. I suppose she'd be in her 40s, very fit, very attractive, and it didn't occur to me that she might be dying. I mean, she's a sports reporter for Sky News. She lives for sport. She's fit, healthy. I just assumed that she was there to represent some relative that had had a traumatic death. So when she explained to me that she'd been given 3 years to live through breast cancer, I was shocked. But there's nothing unusual in that, you know. People get given terminal prognoses all the time, but that was not her concern. She was dealing okay with the fact that even though she'd only got a 16-year-old daughter, that she'd been given 3 years to live. She was dealing okay with that. What she couldn't deal with was the fact that she has an allergy to opioids. So when her time comes to do the hard bit right at the very end, and when the pain control is required, she can't have pain control because morphine would set off a reaction in her body. In other words, palliative care can't help, despite our friend, the expert Archbishop of Canterbury's statement to the contrary. Now, for people like that, for people like Anne, and there are 6,000 people a year like that, for whom palliative care can't help, basically they've got three options. They either tough it out, or two, they commit suicide, and I know people that have, or three, they go to Dignitas for an assisted death. This poor girl, you know, if she is going to be well enough to go to Dignitas, then she's not ready to die. And if she's ready to die, then she won't be well enough to get on a plane and go to Dignitas, and she's very worried about her daughter, leaving her daughter, and because she can't go with her. And as I've said before, her body would have to stay in Switzerland. You can't bring the body back. It's an appalling situation, but, for the Archbishop of Canterbury to say that situations like that, can be all solved with good palliative care is just outrageous. I was annoyed by that. Another one which has really got to me, and I've only read this today for the first time. This is a statement by the Bishop of Shrewsbury, the Reverend Mark Davis, and I'd like to quote him also verbatim, and this is how it reads. It is hard to fathom why this proposal is such an urgent priority, and why Parliament will proceed in haste. This is especially troubling when we recall that, due to its dangers, assisted suicide was overwhelmingly rejected by the House of Commons only 9 years ago. It is an especially dangerous moment for politicians to open the door to euthanasia, the medical killing of the sick, the disabled and the elderly. We already hear of a social duty to end our lives when we become a burden to others. This is not the kind of society in which we would wish to grow old or become vulnerable. If medical professionals now sworn to protect the lives of patients become those who assist in killing and suicide, how will our relationship change to those we have to look to for help and care? Well, on a number of levels, I feel that this is a rather ill-informed statement to make. First of all, proceeding in haste. I mean, Dignity in Dying, who are a not-for-profit organisation, have been campaigning for years and years and years for this. And if it doesn't go through on the 29th of November, by the way, it's going to be years more before we get anywhere close to it. There's been no haste about this. For the 6,000 people a year that are dying that palliative care can't help, this can't come soon enough. Like, it's 16 people a day. For every day we spend talking about this like we are now, there's been another 16 people go through what Anne went through. Haste? That's annoying. Assisted suicide, he's got that conflated with assisted dying. We're not talking about assisted suicide. Suicide is for people that are going to live and they make a choice and they decide they choose to die. That's suicide, when you take your own life because you were going to live but you choose to die. The people we're talking about here are in the final stages of dying anyway. Assisted dying is for those that are in the final stages of a terminal illness. It's not a suicide. Assisted dying is not about the ending of life. Let us get that straight. It's not about the ending of life. It's about the shortening of death. I mean, I feel sure that the Reverend Mark Davis, if he's ever been into hospital and had surgery of any sort, I'm sure he will have had an anaesthetic, a medical intervention to make the process less traumatic than it would ordinarily be. So it's okay to accept an anaesthetic, but it's not okay to accept an assisted death days or weeks, whatever, before you're about to die anyway. Well, I mean, the two things are pretty close, but I mean, maybe he doesn't see it that way. He uses the term euthanasia, which is where the state and the medics take control of the killing of people. Medical killing of the sick, you know what we're campaigning for, the medication would be self-administered. I mean, he hasn't read the bill, clearly. And yet he's made a statement here that will be influenced by others in the clergy. So I do wonder what these people would actually say if they came face to face with Anne, who was in the final stages of her death, and they, you know, what would they say to her to try and convince her that no, she didn't need assisted dying, she needed to tough it out right to the end and suffocate. Yeah, what would they say? I don't know if I've mentioned the Liverpool Care Pathway before, but maybe I have. But for many years, the NHS has embraced the Liverpool Care Pathway. Have you heard of that at all? Are you even aware of it? Because a lot of people are not. But when a friend of mine was telling me that his mother was put on the Liverpool Care Pathway recently, the NHS basically, this is for people that are in the final stages and the NHS can't do anything with them. They put them on this pathway. And it's basically depriving people of food and water. And a friend of mine, his mother was put on it, and it took her 8 days to die, he was telling me. Only the other day we had the conversation. I didn't know his mother had died in this way. It took her 8 days to die. She dehydrated to death. Is that more compassionate than this? And taking a tablet and ending it in a few moments? A good friend of mine was on the Liverpool Care Pathway, and when his wife went to visit him, he was drinking the water out of the vase of flowers. He was that desperate for a drink. It was an appalling way to die, you know. This is what's going on, what's been going on in the past and is still going on in the present. And we have people that you know, that seem to think that we don't need to make changes. I find that rather disturbing. So what I would say is please do keep a very open mind to the debate, because there is so much more to this than so many people are aware of. As I've said before, every constituency in the country was polled at the beginning of the year with an overwhelming majority of people in favour, about 75% of the population of the country in favour of assisted dying with the correct controls in place. And we just need to get that message across to people like this, to our politicians, and hopefully they may listen. So if it was your intention to contact your MP, then please do so. We don't have a lot of time left now. It's only a few days left. You can go onto the Dignity in Dying website, and you can complete the form. Just press send. It'll go automatically to your own MP. They've set it up a template where all the work is done for you. Please, if you haven't done it, you intend to do it, perhaps you could do it sooner rather than later, so that we can get this message across before it's too late. If we don't nail this on the 29th, then it'll be years before it happens. So we really have to act on this now. You've tolerated me for 18 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much. I do go on, I know. There's so much more to say. I've actually cut it short. So thanks for your time and for your focus, and I'll try and keep you updated. Thank you. Have a good weekend.